Hello and welcome. This is the third recording in the series that we're doing today, and this one is Deploy and Manage Updates for Windows 10 and Office. My name is James Bell. I'm a Product Marketing Manager with the Microsoft 365 Apps and Endpoints team, and joining me today we have Dave Backman, who is the Chief Technology Orator for the Windows Servicing and Delivery Division. Dave, would you like to give a quick intro?
Sure, James. So, hi, everybody. My name is Dave Bachman. I'm an evangelist for Windows 10, Windows as a Service, and the modern desktop. Spend the majority of my time meeting with customers, partners, and our internal technical teams, espousing the virtues of Windows 10 and why currency is so important for our customers to remain up to date. To ensure that they're fully patched, secure, safe, and are providing the best, most productive solution for their end users.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. So let's get into it. As a recap, let's talk a bit about the Microsoft Servicing Framework. For those of you who have seen the previous sessions that we've done, we've really focused on a plan, prepare, and deploy process to help you stay current with both Windows and Office. This is an iterative cycle where you keep going through this motion every time a new update comes out, and we want to try and fit this into regular work. So we're trying to move away from those big IT projects where you go in and spend a lot of time and effort doing one move and then waiting a couple of years and doing it again. So we're really trying to fit this process into your work, aligned to plan, prepare, and deploy. And the benefits we have for that are obviously improvements to intelligent security, enhanced productivity, flexible management, and of course, simplified updates. So with that recap underway, let's move to talk about the different areas of effort that span the pillars of the framework. We've talked through before things like compatibility, deployment, capability, and modernization. And we're going to think about, for this session, about these areas in terms of validation. So did we do everything right in our plan and prepare phase? And if we encounter issues, we should categorize what those issues are, and we should add them to our lessons learned in each of these four pillars. And that'll really help us as part of that iterative process where we take those learnings from the deploy phase and we can feed them back into the plan phase for the next update. If things didn't work, how can we improve them? Where were the delays? How can we unblock them and move forward from there? I'll now hand it over to Dave to talk through some of the technologies that we're going to use in this phase and talk through and how they can help you to deploy.
So what you'll hear from James and I throughout the session today with regards to deploy and certain aspects of plan and prepare, certainly modernization is key to the whole process. Going modern management, modern devices, and cloud enabled certainly light up your ability to be much more successful in the process. And as promised, well, we're really going to spend a lot of time talking about the framework and kind of the steps behind what it takes to leverage a servicing framework. We're also going to sprinkle in the opportunity to talk about some of the technology that'll actually light up your ability to succeed and light up the process around deployment of Windows updates and the future updates as well. So, and talking about modernization on the previous slide, again, going cloud has some significant benefits. And in these days of the remote work scenario, certainly deploying devices and provisioning devices out to your end user population in a remote work scenario, or soon to be more of a hybrid workforce, Autopilot is one of those tools that you absolutely must have a look at and consider deploying. So Autopilot is essentially a hands-off deployment capability run by Intune, where once you're a customer signed up to run Autopilot, your users actually place an order directly with the OEMs. The OEM will lay down whatever feature set you have requested, whatever image, however you want to do it. It could be even a plain vanilla envelope from a Windows perspective. And they load that device up and actually ship it directly out to the end user population. In most instances today, it's directly to somebody's house. That user then pulls that device out of the box. Typically, the IT organization will provide some documentation on how to get that device up and running, but it simply is turning it on, connecting to wireless, logging in, and Intune will pick up the fact that it's a brand new device, that you're an Autopilot user, and it'll start laying down policies and get that machine up and running. I received, from a Microsoft IT perspective, I received my first Autopilot enabled device back in December. It was a Surface 3, and literally they had me up and functioning and productive within about a 5-minute time frame. In our instance, up and productive is really getting email and Office loaded on the devices. We don't do a lot of line of business application installations as part of the process. It's pretty much a pull mechanism. If I need some additional applications, I'll go out and pull them down. So it becomes a balance for you guys as you're starting to think about, okay, well, Autopilot's great. You can actually do application deployments as part of Autopilot, but the trade-off is it's going to be a lot longer installation time to bring down, say, 10 gigs worth of line of business applications versus going at a very light kind of, hey, we just need email and M365 to get up and running, and then the users can pull. So it becomes a balance that you need to kind of work through in the process to make that happen. From a prerequisite perspective, it's relatively simple to get up and running, assuming that you've already taken the steps to go modern and go cloud. So Azure Active Directory is certainly a key to the process, and then having Intune so that those devices get registered in Intune, and when you log in, you actually kick that off. And so again, it's a very key piece of kind of the discussion that I'm going to have in the 4th of the 4 series that we're doing on deployment. And so talking about the kind of business continuity of supporting the hybrid workforce moving forward, where you're going to have to figure out how you're going to have to deploy and manage devices on remote users that are spread out all over the countryside, where it doesn't make sense to, drop them into a depot, get them set up, so on and so forth. So this really takes IT out of the picture and puts the deployment in the hands of the users. Very simple, very easy. I know over the past 90 days, as an example, we've deployed, or not we, but Autopilot's actually deployed about 100,000 devices, so extremely effective. And if you don't know what it is or haven't gone deep on it, I would suggest you do. You can see I've got a link down there that you'll be able to tap into. James, any commentary around Autopilot and the value?
One thing I would say, Dave, is, what a handy solution to have in this time of remote work. So when you can't just easily get to the office, find out how you want to configure things, get your new device, to have that capability of it being just shipped out to a home, turning it on and making it work is really, really helpful right now. My wife actually spilled a whole glass of water on her laptop the other month, and unfortunately her company wasn't using Autopilot, but and she had an IT tech on site, as did me, but that would have been a really helpful solution in those sort of cases, because those sort of things will happen as we're all cramped into different rooms and trying to work remotely as well. So let's shift focus to the deploy phase of the Microsoft Servicing Framework and take a look at some of the guidance and tips and tricks we think will be really helpful in order for you to have a successful deployment. When we think about deploy, I like to think about it as 2 sub-phases. So the first one being pilot deployment, which is nothing new. It's a case of testing out all of the work that we've done in plan and prepare to make sure that it functions and we can validate, and then rolling out more broadly. And how that looks will largely depend on the size of your organization, your appetite to push out at scale, and other timing factors that you may have around the complexities of your own business. So let's talk through a bit of pilot deployment. So the success of this is largely going to depend on the devices you've chosen and the users you've selected to provide you with feedback in the pilot. We won't really know what full success looks like until the broad deployment begins, but performed correctly, this can really eliminate a lot of the risk that we have. We've been talking a lot about desktop analytics and its value in the prepare phase, about helping you understand how to categorize applications and provide data-driven insights. And that continues in the pilot deployment phase. Desktop analytics will provide you with a set of recommended pilot devices you can push the update out to, and then you can use the monitoring and reporting capabilities of DA to help you understand how successful that was. Not only from an app perspective, but from a device perspective. How many have received the update? Where are the deployment blockers? Where are the technical things I need to go and address for my environment to make sure that this is smooth when I go and push out more broadly. So that's really, really helpful. We also use this time to make sure we can test out any new capabilities that have come from the platform. So if we're rolling out a new feature, this is the time to test and get feedback on what that looks like. And it's also a great way to test messaging. So if we are advertising this update to our users, whether that's through an intranet site or it's through a targeted email, that sort of messaging and how it lands can be tested here, and you can certainly get feedback as to what that looks like. In this phase as well, we also suggest that if your pilot users have really major problems, and maybe there is something that was missed during that plan and prepare phase, you can actually use our recovery functionality to get you back to that existing version of Windows. That's not something we typically recommend in broad deployment. We certainly don't want thousands of devices going to be rolled back. But in a pilot deployment scenario, that's a really helpful and robust tool to get you back, or to get that user back where they were in case of anything catastrophic. And we don't expect that to happen, but sometimes just having that feature and functionality there is a good way to alleviate any concerns from the business around what's going on, as a lot of people are working remotely. Dave, any other tips or tricks you think are important to note in this area?
Yeah, the one thing I will say, the pilot is a great opportunity to really do a lot of testing and validation. And unfortunately, what I see with some customers, not all, but a few, they tend to treat a pilot as, hey, we're going to roll out to the IT organization, we're going to roll out to friends and family to kind of validate and do some basic testing. I like to recommend customers actually leverage tools like desktop analytics to get a good statistically sound cross-section of users, machines, line of business applications and owners, just about anything you could imagine that shows up in the estate. So you've got a great statistically relevant test group that is validating and testing, so that just you're not going to capture 100% of the scenarios, but if you capture 90% of the scenarios during the pilot phase, it definitely is going to set you up for a lot of success moving forward as you make that final deploy decision and head into the broad deployment.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think you've raised an interesting point there about moving to broad deployment, because there are really two ways you can think about exiting pilot deployment and moving across to broad. And those ways are either validating as much as you can and having complete confidence that everything is going to work, which will then shorten what you can do in the broad deployment. Because you could, if you know everything's going to work, then you have the flexibility to push out that update at scale. Alternatively, if you do encounter issues with some applications, you can also do more of a phased rollout. And that's where we start talking about the different rings and how we think about deploying those updates to devices that are confirmed good to go, and then continuing to work on those other applications while that broad deployment is happening. So there's really two ways to think about how we do that. So let's now dive in more into broad deployment and things you need to consider there. So as I said earlier, only go broad if the pilot does what you need it to do and you have successful exit criteria. Make sure that you're in a confident place across all of the different areas, not only applications and validating compatibility, but you've checked the right policies, you've got everything in place, your deployment infrastructure is ready to go, and you've tested through that process. That is certainly key. Also, don't feel like if you do encounter some issues, that means that you need to completely abandon the project and go back to square one. We have some great configuration options to enable you to pause deployments, adjust the pace up or down as you need to go, and just think about how you can continue doing that to devices that are ready to take on the update as we go through. This is really the section where I fully encourage you to think about your deployment rings and your deployment strategy. If you're thinking about that earlier, such as the plan or prepare phase, I think that's too early because we don't have all the information that we need in order to come up with a ring strategy that's relevant for this particular update. So once you've gone through pilot, you understand exactly where you are, you know what's going to work and what doesn't, and that's when you can start thinking about a ring strategy. We also recommend thinking about a pull and a push model for updates. So, and by pull model, I mean advertising that update to users, but not enforcing the deployment of it. That gives flexibility to users, especially remote users, around when to schedule those updates and make sure they do it at a time that they're comfortable with, rather than logging on, getting that update, having it deploy, and potentially missing meetings or doing things like that. We want to make sure that those configuration options are understood, regardless of if you're on Configuration Manager or Intune, or a third-party provider. You really need to be familiar with those different experiences and options that you can have and make sure that they're sufficient for the types of users that you have so that they have a good experience. We'd certainly recommend talking with your support teams and operations teams around monitoring the success of the update and things like cold trends. So if there's a lot of support requests coming in and that goes up a number of percentage points, maybe that's something you want to think about in terms of level of success. So if they raise up by a lot and it's related to the update, then you've got a problem and you need to hit pause and think about what's going on and what you can address to go through there as well. In terms of tooling, we certainly have a number of options here to help push that out. Things like delivery optimization for those that are in the office. If you want to update fleets of machines, that's certainly helpful. And what I would say is really think about the challenges that you get here. If there are any issues encountered, and make sure you write them down and feed those back into that plan process. We really want this to be an iterative cycle where you can understand what to address on the next update and make sure that user experience is fantastic. The improvements that we've had over the years with Windows 10 has meant that updates now don't take hours. I did an update 2 weeks ago to my Surface device and under 10 minutes. So literally the amount of time it took to grab a coffee and then come back up and the machine was good. So it's really impressive where we've got to these days. And if you are having issues with boot up times and things like that, we can certainly provide some guidance around helping you. We have a number of different sessions, and Dave, I'm sure, has a number of resources at the end of the slide that we can point you to help you with that as well. And Dave, any additional comments on broad deployment?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I'll say. As you move into moving away from a project-based approach to a process-based approach, you really get into how critical having monitoring and leveraging all your listening mechanisms as far as how successful the deployment's going. Because if things start to go sideways and your listening mechanisms start to light up with challenges and issues across the board, the first thing you want to do is, as James kind of mentioned, is you want to hit that red button. You kind of want to put a pause on the deployment, kind of assess what's going on, remediate what it is, get comfortable, and then hit that green button and turn the process back on so that, again, you're running it as a process versus a project. And that also alludes to using those monitoring and those listening mechanisms across the board to create a continuous improvement cycle with your deployments, whether they be pilot or broad. You will learn lessons with every deployment. Take those lessons, bake them into your process. As you get better and better, your cycle time should start to shrink. The amount of application testing that you're doing should start to shrink. And essentially your time to market and getting your feature updates will be a lot quicker, feature set over feature set. So really use those listening mechanisms, take the feedback to heart, bake them into that continuous improvement cycle so that you can get better and better in the process as you move forward. So we've talked a lot around what the framework is around. We've talked about running a pilot, having some success criteria within that pilot, and getting you to a broad deployment decision so that you're ready to move forward. So what's next in that process? It's very simple. It is all about optimizing delivery of your feature sets, of your monthly patches, so that you minimize a couple of key things that we hear from customers. The first one is bandwidth impacts. Certainly, I'm sure your network guys are watching how much bandwidth you're sucking up during any potential feature update that you're pushing out. Obviously, the package sizes, so the size of the package you're actually distributing across sites and to end users, especially in this remote world of remote work, as well as just the overall general impact to the end users. So in previous sessions, I mentioned things like express updates. Express updates are essentially differential updates, which really shrink down the package size. Typically, we saw the original package sizes up around 3.8 gig. Having express updates turned on prior and configured prior to 1809, you could get those package sizes down to 1.2. So you can see what we've done to optimize. Good news is with express updates beginning in 1809, it's actually built in. So there's really not much you can do as far as getting that configured because it's all native built into the OS these days, which is a positive thing. The other thing that you could take advantage of is delivery optimization. We've touched on delivery optimization briefly. At the end of the day, what DO is all about, it is all about peer-to-peer caching. So it optimizes delivery. And so if you think about a remote site, assuming we get back to normal and we're back in the office, a remote site of say 200 users, it's the first individual that pulls down the feature update that actually becomes the peer for the rest of the 200 on site. It is dynamic, so actually the next 4 individuals that pull the package from the peer actually become peers themselves. So you end up with a cross section of 5 machines supporting the other 195 machines, and it's very dynamic. So it's not like one individual will get hit by 95 machines trying to pull bits at the same time. It's optimized. It keeps an eye on the CPU and resources on that particular device. So it becomes very flexible in the process. Just to give you an idea of what it's capable of, certainly you can, once you configure it, it's one of those options that you configure once and forget about. Currently supported content are obviously the Windows updates from feature quality, security, drivers. A new recent add was Office Pro Plus. And Office 2019. So if you are running delivery optimization, those bits will take advantage of DO and drop down locally. Upcoming supported opportunities are in 2004, sorry. Obviously with Edge Chromium going out every 6 weeks, having delivery optimization support that content is going to be critical. And the one that I'm really excited about is MSIX apps beginning in 2004. This is absolutely critical. If you're not familiar with MSIX, it is the new packaging technology that we've established over, I'd say, the last year and a half. And with DO and supporting MSIX apps, if you think about business continuity moving forward in the hybrid workforce, and I'm going to talk about a lot of this detail in the upcoming session around business continuity, it really enables your IT organization to much more effectively deploy line of business applications using content delivery mechanisms and optimization like delivery optimization. So if you think about what business continuity in the hybrid workforce needs to look like in the future, line of business apps and delivering those effectively certainly is going to be key. So if you're not familiar with MSIX, I would definitely look into it, because the benefits and value you're going to gain from overlaying those packages with delivery optimization is really going to minimize the impact to your remote workers as well as your remote sites. And then on the roadmap coming up, dynamic updates is coming in 2021 H1, same with the MDM agent. And then you're also going to be able to take advantage of config man content as well. So at the end of the day, it really gives you kind of a rounded, balanced way of deploying everything you need to deploy to your end user population, and while minimizing bandwidth impact, regardless of whether it's a home Wi-Fi setup or a small office that doesn't have good connectivity. James, have you got anything to add?
Dave, I think you've covered everything there. And one thing I would add is that a resource like the Windows IT Pro community and tech community is really helpful in this instance, because you can get all of the latest information around what we're doing with those technologies, how to implement them, configure them, and how to think about them differently as well. And a lot of the content that we've talked about here is also available on that IT Pro tech community site. So you can go in and check out, a lot of the considerations we've discussed, and really dive deep on some of those things in case we've missed anything. So I'd definitely recommend checking that out too.
Great points, James, on all the documentation. So we do a great job of documenting all the available optimized capabilities. And again, it's really, for me, it's the built-in capabilities of Windows 10 and all the new manageability features we're bringing to light that really light this stuff up. One thing that I did want to mention, and we did talk about Microsoft Endpoint Manager as being kind of the one-stop shop for all things management around Windows. So if you're not familiar with Endpoint Manager, certainly it gives you management capabilities from a single pane of glass across the on-prem as well as the cloud. So it definitely allows you from a single pane of glass to manage your SCCM world, your Intune world. But it also allows you to manage a lot of this optimization. So delivery optimization and analytics. There's a whole bunch of other features that kind of get lit up within the Microsoft Endpoint Manager solution. So certainly as we talk about this hybrid workforce and organizations wanting a single point and a single pane of glass and a single management plane, Microsoft Endpoint Manager really lights up all the capabilities that we've been talking in detail. And certainly they're kind of going back to what James was saying. MEM is well documented, and we've got a lot of great resources to light it up. And then finally, kind of what I want to leave you guys with as far as delivery optimization is kind of talk about how it works. I'm not going to spend a lot of time draining the slide, other than it's kind of broken down into three pillars. First is really publishing the content, getting it out to the location that it needs to be, and then obviously downloading it from the peers, and then caching it until the content expires. So delivery optimization is a fantastic tool to really optimize deployment across the wire. And it didn't have a lot of granular management capability built into it. So beginning in 2004, we announced a solution in private preview called Microsoft Connected Cache. Now, if you take Microsoft Connected Cache, again, you've got to be on 2004, which goes back to those comments and discussions around why currency really matters. Being on that latest version, you can start taking advantage of a lot of these great technologies. But Microsoft Connected Cache really puts delivery optimization on steroids. It gives you a lot more control over where the peers come from and where the data comes from, as well as gives you opportunities to define fallback opportunities should the local peers not be present. You can actually tell it that, hey, I want you to go out to the Microsoft Content Delivery Network as a fallback, as a primary. So it really gives you a lot more granular control. So I'm really excited about the combination of delivery optimization and Microsoft Connected Cache coming together. But again, you need to get on that 2004 or later release to take advantage of some of that stuff. James, you got anything to add?
The one thing I would add, Dave, is, I mean, we've had a lot of ISVs offer similar functionality within the last sort of 10, 15 years. So it's really good to see some of these solutions, come out of the box. And it's really helpful to speed up that deployment process and get what you need. So yeah, I think you've covered a lot of the good stuff there.
Great comment, James. And so there is one thing that I kind of wanted to leave everybody with regards to optimizing. Certainly, once you configure it, you should be good to go, and it'll continue to run as advertised and really provide a lot of benefits during your deployments. And so with that, I kind of want to pop over to and finish out with the available resources that we recommend from follow-up on our session today around the deployment. Certainly, we've got a lot of great resources that you can take advantage of that really delve into the detail behind optimizing delivery. There is a great white paper that we published. I don't know exactly how many pages. It's probably up around 30 to 40 pages that our team published recently around optimizing Windows 10 update adoption. So great tips and tricks within there. And so each of these resources is highly suggested and very valuable in the process. So please take a look at it. And with that, I'm going to close out the session. I want to thank James for joining me to talk about deployment and the servicing framework. Hopefully you found this to be of value, and we appreciate you joining the session, and everybody have a great day.